Hello there, everyone. A happy Thursday to you, a happy springtime, a happy April. And that is perfect timing for a conversation of how to clean things out and refresh. We have a special guest with us here again. We always love conversations with him. You know him as the founder and president of PCRM, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, author of over 100 scientific publications and 20 books, including by name his program for reversing diabetes, the 21-day weight loss kickstart, the cheese trap, which may come into conversation a little bit today, your body in balance, and the power foods diet. We had a fantastic conversation about power foods last year. I welcome Dr. Neal Barnard. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's great to be back with you today.
It's always a pleasure to have you here. I know that everyone who tunes in always looks forward to the amazing information you have to share from your decades of work in the field. We have people coming in from all over the place. Hello, Charlotte from Michigan. We have Heather from Florida, Betty from Pennsylvania, Peter also from Michigan. We have Baltimore in the house, including myself over here, California, South Carolina. We have people from all over the country, all over the world. Thank you for tuning in for this wonderful conversation we are going to have with Dr. Barnard about the topic at hand, and that is calorie density. Everyone knows that we talk about everything whole food, plant-based. We all have different intentions for what we would like to do with our diet, with our health, with our bodies, and there are so many questions about that. Dr. Barnard, to make sure that we get everyone in the know right from the start, can you answer that prime question for us? What is calorie density?
Well, calorie density means how many calories are there per unit of food. So if I have a glass of water, it doesn't have any calories at all. So it doesn't matter how big or small that glass is, the calorie density is going to be 0. But on the other hand, let's say I have gravy. Well, gravy's got a lot of calories in it because it's really fatty. And so the calorie density is really high. So the question is, which foods are kind of low in the calorie density? Because that means if I end up eating a lot, I'm not going to be gaining a whole lot of weight. So that's calorie density in a nutshell.
Now, when we take a look at that nutshell, especially in terms of the numbers and everything, we're measuring things per gram, per pound. A lot of people might take a look at that and go, oh my gosh, I was not the best in math. Why am I looking at that? So taking it out of the specificity of foods by, their weight per gram and per pound, how can we take a look at calorie density from more of a categorical representation of different types of foods?
Yeah, and if I'm really glad that you raised that, because people shouldn't stress about this and they shouldn't worry about the numbers. You don't have to have a PhD to get onto a healthy diet that'll help you get rid of unwanted weight. About as scientific as you need to be is carbohydrates, which means starchy foods, sugary foods. Carbohydrates have only 4 calories in a gram. So there's 4 calories in any gram of any carbohydrate, whether that starch came from a potato or bread or oatmeal, doesn't matter. 4 calories per gram. Fats have 9. Mm-hmm. So fats, whether it's animal fat or even vegetable oils, have 9 calories per gram, more than twice the calories compared with carbohydrate. And if it's fiber, high fiber foods, fiber has almost no calories. Your body doesn't really pull a whole lot of calories out of them. So those are the things that are important to remember. Protein, I wouldn't think about it too much, but it has 4 calories per gram too. So the big numbers that should jump out at us is that number 9. Fat has 9 calories per gram. So if I'm trying to lose weight, or if I'm trying to reverse diabetes or something like that, getting away from the fatty foods is going to be your best friend. Mm-hmm. So it's a really good thing to do.
Now, we talked about a lot of those macronutrients right over there, specifically focusing on carbohydrates, fat. We also mentioned protein. When we have this conversation about calorie density of food, and everyone's always talking about how many calories should I eat? Should I watch my calories? How does that also work its way into the conversation of these same foods and their nutrient density? When we're looking at calorie density and nutrient density, how do those match together to show us what foods we should be eating?
Well, you'll often hear people say you want to have nutrient-dense foods. And I guess what they mean by that is if I'm having a soda, which has just got a lot of sugar in it, it doesn't have good nutrients that feed my body, kind of what's the point of it? But if I have a baked sweet potato. It's loaded with beta carotene. That's where the orange color comes from. So that's great. Or if I have a tomato or a tomato sauce, it's loaded with lycopene, another antioxidant. Or if I have blueberries, that dark blue color comes from anthocyanins, and that's a great thing too. So people talk about kind of packing in those nutrients. That said, I'm going to say something that some people are not going to like very much. I don't think we necessarily have to have nutrient-dense foods all the time.
Okay.
You don't have to take a funnel and just jam stuff into your body constantly. What you do need to do is include in your routine vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains. And if you leave out the animal products and junk, you're going to get the nutrients the body wants. So I don't think. Let's say I have a diet where I've got a lot of rice in my diet, and I got some beans, I got some vegetables. You might think, well, the rice, it's not really nutrient dense, and I'm going to say it doesn't have to be. You're not trying to fatten yourself up. You can be eating foods that aren't super calorie dense, and that's fine.
I love that because it takes so much of a burden and so much of a stress over this idea of perfection, right? The perfect diet and what I need, and obviously the pitfalls that can come from that when there's a lot of overwhelm and overthinking about all of that. We have this amazing infographic, Dr. Barnard. I'm sure that you have seen it. It's one of the most popular ones on forks over knives. It shows the calorie density of different foods, specifically with 500 calories of what a specific food looks like in terms of satiety and filling someone up. For all of you out there, you may have seen this before. Dr. Barnard, could you explain this to someone who might look at this and go, I have no idea what I am looking at?
Okay, well, one part of satiety is how much does it take to fill up your stomach? So if I'm filling my stomach with something where there's something really, really, really calorie dense, like oil, or for that matter, butter, any fat. Fat has, as I mentioned, 9 calories per gram. So if you want to have, if you want to get a certain number of calories from something that's fatty, you're not getting much bulk with it. Yeah, you can reach your calorie limit so soon that you don't feel full. And on the other hand, when you look out the right, and so with the 5 different stomachs that you see here, you're going from something there, you have very little food to give you 500 calories because it's such a calorie dense food. Going out to the far right, you're seeing foods that really are not so calorie dense. So if you're eating lots of vegetables and fruits, they're low calories, but they fill up your stomach and you stop eating. We've done this in research studies quite a lot where we'll bring in people and we'll say, okay, let's not eat animal products at all. Let's keep oily foods really low. So what that leaves is vegetables and fruits and beans and grains. It's kind of going to look a bit like that stomach on the right. So what we find is that people think they're eating as much as they did before. But when we measure it, they're actually eating perhaps 200 or 300 calories a day less than before because their stomach fills up on fewer calories. They think, oh my goodness sakes, I've overdone it. They stop eating and they've actually eaten a lot fewer calories.
I think it breaks the norm, the perception, the idea to realize I could eat more food with fewer calories and lose weight and still feel full at the same time. I think that is a revolutionary concept, especially societally for many people.
It is so important, and I really want to get this through the heads of my colleagues in the medical field, because I was reading a commentary not so long ago where they were saying, here's why we need to prescribe weight loss drugs. And the reason they said you need to prescribe drugs is they said nobody can stick with a diet. Nobody wants to be hungry all the time. Nobody wants to just try to cut 500 calories a day or 1,000 calories a day off because you got to make effort with every meal. And I thought, stop. Don't do that.
Yeah.
You're right. If that's the way you're going to try to lose weight, it's tough. So what you've described here and what your graphic shows is that you don't need to be putting in effort. Once you've found the foods that you like that are rich in vegetables and fruits and whole grains and beans, you're eating those things, your stomach fills up, you're automatically pushing away from the table. And it becomes really, really, really easy. So put down that prescribing pen. We don't need to be pushing drugs on everybody. What we need to do instead is help people to understand that a healthy diet Does require a little bit of learning at first,
Yeah.
but pretty soon you take off the training wheels, and it does not require effort to stay on a diet that will help you to slim down.
Now, we have this concept of calorie density, which we'll talk about in its full breadth, and not just about weight loss, but also weight management. And we'll also even get to a conversation point that many people ask of, what if I need to gain weight? When it comes to weight loss, especially for many people out there who are looking to lose weight for one reason or another, in your practice over the years, what are some of the pitfalls that people experience when trying weight loss diets, and specifically really reducing their caloric intake primarily?
Yeah, when people try to reduce their caloric intake, they can do it for a while. Many people can do it for a while. You're hungry, and this is kind of the typical classic diet. I'm just eating less food. However, eventually you get sick of it, and particularly in a moment of weakness. You didn't have a good night's sleep last night, or you had an argument with somebody or whatever, and you think, to heck with it. I just can't keep doing this. And people break their diet, and then they think, okay, the floodgates have opened, and they stop. And most people just cannot continue to starve themselves day after day after day after day. So we see this all the time in people who come to see us. They've done that kind of diet. Or another thing that's similarly popular is going on a low carbohydrate diet. So people say, I read this book by Atkins or the South Beach Diet or something like that, and it said I should avoid carbs. And people will lose weight if they avoid all carbohydrate. Not everybody does, but most people do. And the reason is that carbohydrate is about half of what you eat.
Yeah.
And if you're taking out half of what you eat, you're going to lose weight. But the problems with that, of course, are similar, is that you can't keep it up. And frankly, you shouldn't keep it up, because the foods that are left are meat and gravy and unhealthy things that aren't going to love you back into the future. So there's all kinds of variants, but those are things that we very commonly see. I have to tell you, though, one of the things that is a little bit troubling is how many people have heard that the Mediterranean diet ought to solve their problems. And so they're thinking, well, I should have more vegetables and fruits, maybe some chickpeas, that's Mediterranean, but I can have some chicken and some fish and a whole lot of olive oil over everything. And the problem is the scale just doesn't budge. We did a randomized trial that was also what we call crossover. We brought in 62 people. They wanted to lose weight. Half went Mediterranean, like I described. The other half went on a low-fat vegan diet. 16 weeks later, 4 months later, they switched. And so everybody did both diets in random order. And what we discovered is the Mediterranean diet sounded so indulgent and attractive.
Yeah.
And people had heard all kinds of great things about it. The weight loss, when you net it out, is a big fat zero. Because yes, you might be throwing out, you're not having gravy as much, or steak or something, but you're making up for it with fish, which has fish fat, chicken, which has chicken fat, olive oil, which is 100% fat. It may be somewhat better quality fat than beef fat, but it's still 9 calories per gram. And people get really, really frustrated with it. Their cholesterol levels don't fall.
Right.
We published this a couple of years ago, and I will never forget how angry our research participants were, particularly the ones who went vegan first.
Okay.
And they lost weight, and they thought, this is great. 4 months later, they thought, I really like this. My tastes have adjusted. This diet is helping me. And then we made them do the Mediterranean diet. They got so annoyed because they had lost their taste for cheese and chicken, and they started regaining lost weight. And so anyway, Mediterranean diet sounds great, big waste of time.
You wrote a book called The Cheese Trap. And even talking about some of these foods and perhaps their addictive qualities about them, especially when we're looking at adjusting our diet and lifestyle. Can you touch on that a little bit more? We took a look at that graphic. Cheese, was one of those visuals in there for one of the stomachs. How do we best approach making those changes? What can we expect when we start to cut out some of those foods and incorporate in these whole plant foods into our diet?
Well, by the way, I maybe should mention sort of how we do it, because
Yeah.
I have to say, what we do is the opposite of what people think I'm going to tell them to do. That people will say, just kind of meet the patient where they are, help them make some baby steps. Little changes can help. And I say, that's not what we're going to do.
Okay.
And here's what I want to do. I'm going to take your hand and we are going to jump in the deep end of the pool together. We are going to, you go to the swimming pool. It's June. It's a little cool. People stick their toe in the water. I don't know. Is it okay? And a half hour later, they're kind of going down the steps. Wait, jump in, and in about a couple 3 minutes, the water will seem fine.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do with the plant-based diet. We break it into steps. We take 1 week, and the patient has, or it can be a research participant. They take 1 week and they think about foods they would eat if they were avoiding animal products and keeping oils low.
Yeah.
At the end of the week, they got a huge long list. They said, all right, first, I'm not a chef, so my cereal bowl in the morning, I just top it with milk. So I guess I could top it with soy milk, almond milk, rice milk. Yeah, okay, fine. I make oatmeal. I could top it with fruit or cinnamon. Sure, fine. Not fancy, but it works for you. I never tried scrambling tofu. Let me give it a try. If you don't like it, you don't write it down. If you like it, you write it down. After a week, people have a huge list. At dinner, I went to my favorite Italian restaurant. They said instead of ground beef sauce, they got a tomato sauce, a marinara sauce, an arrabbiata sauce.
Yeah.
Great. If you like it, fine. Okay, so people come back, and then we say, all right, it's been a week. You've figured it out. You're probably stocked up on these foods. Now, step 2, eat those foods. Take 3 weeks, do it 100% plant-based, vegan, keep oils really low, and I'm going to keep in touch with you every week. By doing it that way, they get fast results. Yeah. If you say, oh, this week, just take the skin off your chicken, they don't get results. They're not losing weight. They don't feel satisfied. I want them to see results fast. It's like if a person comes into our clinic with pneumonia, I want to cure that person. Yeah. If we're fooling around and saying, well, you really need the antibiotic 3 times a day, but let's start with just once and then kind of work our way up. No, I want to cure you now. And it's not hard to eat spaghetti marinara. It's easy to do these things, and people get results really quickly. So that's kind of our approach, and people do great with it. And everyone will goof up. Everyone will have a problem. So we get together every week. We talk about those problems. You're traveling. You're not sure what to eat. You're going to go to some weird restaurant. You're not too sure what to have. There are always solutions.
When it comes to preparing food at home, can you give a visual of maybe what we want our plates to start looking like in terms of, the portions of these foods or the representation of these foods?
Think of your palate as being fruits and vegetables, beans, or their cousins like beans and lentils and peas, and also whole grains. And within that palette, I'm speaking palette like what a painter would choose from. Yeah, you make what you want. You create your canvas. So for some people, their breakfast. Some people like a light breakfast, like fruit. I would say probably more people want a little more substantial breakfast. So some people will go grain heavy and they'll have old-fashioned oatmeal. Yeah. Great choice. Yeah. Great choice. Some people will have it'll be a cereal. It could be cornflakes or something like that. Is it processed? Yes. Is it bad? No, it's fine. And you put on some soy milk or something, put on some berries. Fair enough. The whole idea is to find out what works for you. And my parameters when we're in a research study typically are going to be really just 2 things. Keep away from animal products. Mm-hmm. And we keep oily foods to a minimum. Now, when I say that, avocados are oily, nuts are oily. And for people who are thin, don't have diabetes, don't have health issues, I'm not going to really worry about those things too much. But even though avocados and nuts and things have much healthier fats, obviously, than animal fats, True. We have found that if people are really trying to lose weight, keeping those fatty foods to a minimum is a good idea for them while they're addressing that target. So have at it. Find the foods you like. Do think international. When you're going to a restaurant, think Italian, think Latin American. So you're at Taco Bell, and they've got the greasy meat taco. Have the soft shell taco. Instead of meat, put in beans, some diced tomatoes, some lettuce, throw in a couple of jalapenos. Have fun with it. And you'll discover that you'll find the pieces you like.
I love that. Thinking international. I love the description of comparing it to a painter's palette, right? When we appreciate art, we want to see all the colors, and we also want to see all of the colors there on our plate. We have a bunch of questions coming in, and we're going to get to them in just a moment. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in for engaging in this wonderful conversation and asking some questions that we are very excited for Dr. Barnard to ask. Before we get to the questions, especially since we have focused more on weight loss, can we talk a little bit more about calorie density in terms of weight maintenance, or even for those people out there who are saying, well, I need to gain weight. Can I do so on these same foods?
Yeah, you sure can. And by the way, I should mention, for people who would like to see actual recipes, I want to sing the praises of Dustin Harder and Lindsay S. Nixon, who worked with me on Power Foods, which you and I talked about before.
Yes.
My book, The Power Foods Diet, is my most recent one. And the whole point of it really is to say, here are foods that you're going to really love. It's not just what you're not going to eat. It's foods that you're going to really love. And it's got food photographs that are about an inch away from food porn, I got to say.
Stellar, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, you can really have fun with it. Okay. So let's say a person is in the maintenance phase. It's the same story. Your body will figure out how many calories it needs. It's a little bit like breathing. I mean, how much should you breathe? Don't worry about it. Your brain is registering how much oxygen is in your blood, and it makes you breathe faster if you need to. Your body is monitoring how many calories you need, including your physical activity, and it will take in the calories that you need. So if you've been losing weight, you're going to be okay if you stick with the same kind of program. Now, if somebody wants to gain weight, first, let's question the assumption. Do you need to gain weight? And sometimes people are told by their loved ones, you're too skinny, you ought to gain weight. And sometimes that's because everyone around you is overweight. And you might be a perfectly good weight, or this is just kind of the way you are. Look at your ancestry and were your grandparents thin or not, and see what you've inherited. And then the other thing is, if somebody's pushing you to gain weight, go online and type in your search engine, BMI calculator. You can calculate what your body mass index ought to be. That's your weight adjusted for how tall you are. BMI calculator, something's come up. You put in your weight and your height, and it will tell you a number. And if that number is between 18.5 and 25, then you are in the weight range where your weight is not going to contribute to cardiovascular disease, to diabetes, and so forth. And frankly, most people are better off being on kind of the lower end of that. Now, if you're at 19, 20, 21, and somebody tells you you need to gain weight, the answer is no, you are in a great spot. Leave me alone. If you're down to 16, 17 or something like that, that is thin. And you might want to talk with your doctor about what's going on and what has contributed to an unwanted weight loss.
Yeah.
If you're healthy, if everything's great, and you're just trying to put on some weight for whatever reason, it's going to be hard to gain a whole lot of weight on vegetables and grains and so forth unless you eat a pretty substantial amount. For that person, the nuts and seeds and avocados will cause weight gain because fat is what tends to do it. Will the weight go where you want it? Maybe, maybe not. It might just go right around your middle. So I don't typically push people to or encourage people to lose weight unless there's some medical issue going on.
Right. We have some great questions over here, and maybe one that fits right into this conversation that we're having, especially in terms of we have more of the general question of how do you get enough protein in your diet, and maybe factoring into that for the people who might want to put on weight for fitness or athletic purposes. How do we take a look at protein in this conversation?
Yeah. I have to say I agree with all those people who say don't worry about protein because there is protein in vegetables and beans and fruits and grains. Now, some of them are lower, some are higher. Fruits are on the lower end. Beans are on the high end. Vegetables, surprisingly, are on the high end. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say as an experiment, you decided tomorrow, all I'm going to eat is broccoli. Nothing but broccoli.
Nothing but broccoli.
I've looked up, the federal government says I'm a man, I need 56 grams of protein per day, or a woman needs 46 grams of protein per day. If I eat nothing but broccoli, could I get 56 grams of protein? Well, if I'm eating 2,000 calories a day, you are going to end up getting a good 140 grams of protein from broccoli.
Wow.
Now, don't try that. That's too boring of a diet. Let's say I'm going to try lentils. Lentils, about 157 grams of pure protein if you ate nothing but lentils on a 2,000 calorie diet. What if I ate broccoli and lentils? Okay, it's starting to average out. What if I have broccoli, lentils, and a grain? What if I have broccoli or other beans? The whole point is plants have a lot of protein in them. So you're not going to have to really worry about it. The only time people have to worry, I think, is in maybe a part of the world where there's a huge, due to some kind of civil strife, food is not available or is extremely restricted. Or somebody got some goofy diet where they were just really, really restricting in a peculiar way. But if you're eating vegetables, fruits, whole grains, beans, and you're eating a variety, and you're eating enough to maintain your weight, you're going to be getting enough protein. Now, I'm not going to step into religion too much here. By religion, I'm talking about what people talk about at the gym. They are going to be saying, you have to get X, you have to get 100 grams of protein or 200 grams of protein. They talk like they've got a stone tablet. They just came down from the mountaintop that they're delivering to you. I have found it impossible to really have a useful conversation when people believe they need an enormous amount of protein. It's as if they are reading from a scripture and they don't.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You just can't get anywhere with it. But I mean, there are plenty of people who do talk about the protein that you need for weight gain. And maybe just a couple of things should be said. Number one is you can't store protein. So if you are gobbling down huge amounts of protein, the first bit goes to meet your needs. And if you just keep overdoing it and you're having too many calories as protein, your body's going to turn it to fat just like anything else. Second thing is that if for whatever reason you are really trying to push protein, let's say you're doing a massive workout and then you're accompanying that workout with a high protein meal. Okay, fair enough. Go for it. Beans and so forth are only going to get you so far.
Yeah.
And that's when people start with protein shakes and high protein products. And I'm not going to say anything bad about them. The only thing I would say is have it be vegan. You go to the gym, and the other religious tenet people have is that whey protein is some magic. Let me tell you what whey protein is. When you make cheese, after you put in the bacterial cultures and the rennet to make it all coagulate, they pour out the liquid, which is whey. And for centuries, people didn't know what to do with that liquid whey. They would throw it in landfills. They would get rid of it. And finally, somebody discovered that if you dehydrate it, you can concentrate the whey protein, put it in a jar and sell it to bodybuilders and convince them that it's somehow better than some other kind of protein. So it's kind of a marketing thing. They're giving you the cast off products that came from cheese.
Yeah. So we have this conversation, again, a lot of people, protein. In this conversation, we can even keep this quick because we do have a couple questions about it. Still the question of, but how many calories should I consume in a day? When we're focusing on these foods, can we throw calorie counting out the window generally or overall?
Absolutely, and you should. An average person is going to eat typically roughly 1,800 to 2,000 calories a day. If you're extremely active, you can go as far up as you want. If you're inactive, a little bit less. But you shouldn't be counting because if you are, you're going to miss the number that's right for you. So your number depends on your metabolism and so forth. By the way, your metabolism will rise. If you are just starting a low-fat vegan diet, you will be burning calories a little bit faster. It's a metabolism-friendly diet. So you'll burn a little bit more calories that way.
I see some people asking about specific types of food. Roasted potatoes with veggies. Absolutely. That's going to be a big thumbs up over there. How about tofu and tempeh? Can you talk a little bit about that, Dr. Barnard?
Sure. Both are fine. I don't know if they're suggested because they're high protein foods. They are, but they're also almost medicinal foods. They have isoflavones in them that we have studied, of course, for their effect for helping with hormonal issues, which is good. As you probably know, people who consume the most soy women who consume the most soy have about a 30% reduction in the risk of breast cancer. And women previously diagnosed with breast cancer, if they consume more soy, are less likely to have that cancer recur. I emphasize that because the urban myth was sort of the opposite. People thought that soy might cause cancer. It doesn't. It reduces the risk. Men who consume more soy have less risk of prostate cancer as well. So it's a good thing all along. Buy organic. If it's organic, it can't be GMO.
With a lot of people who are making changes to their diet, obviously a lot of changes in the body. I know we've talked a little bit about the palate, this palate, the tongue, the taste buds, how that changes over time, and you really get to get a greater appreciation, love, and connection with a lot of these foods. When we talk digestively about incorporating in some of these foods, can you touch a little bit about people who experience bloating, who might have IBS or generally follow a low FODMAP diet? What are some strategies and tips for them to help clear up some of those more uncomfortable situations?
Sure. First of all, if there's any medical issue, you might want to sort that out. I mean, there are people who do have infections that can be cured with an antibiotic, and that's a-okay. You can do that if you need to. But with regard to foods, if you're getting gassy, you're not getting gassy probably from rice or grains typically, unless you've got a wheat issue. Beans can cause gassiness. So if you're new to beans, start small. You know, people think, well, I normally eat a steak this big, so I should have this much beans. I mean, that's a lot of fiber.
Yeah.
That fiber goes down your digestive tract, and the bacteria that your gut bacteria think, I've got to ferment all this, and they produce gassiness. Start small and make sure the beans are well cooked. There are no al dente beans. And as time goes on, you'll discover that you can add more and more and more. Same with cruciferous vegetables, like broccoli or cauliflower. Cook them well. Later on, you might try the raw ones on the crudité tray, but for many people, they get a little gassiness with that. If your gassiness comes from that carbonated soda that you're having or carbonated water, the carbonation is not all absorbed as it's going down your digestive tract. A whole lot of it stays in your colon and comes out the other end. So you might want to think about that as well.
Here's one more question we'll take a look at. When all usual cholesterol markers are low, but someone has high lipoprotein, are there any specific plant foods to add more of or to avoid?
I'm sorry, high, you mean lipoprotein A?
Lipoprotein A, yes, yeah.
Really, the short answer, no, it's mostly genetic.
Okay, that's perfect. And I know
but the dietary approach to dealing with cholesterol is not different. In this case, what we want to do is avoid animal products.
Yep.
That's the only source of cholesterol, and it's the main source of saturated fat, which raises cholesterol levels. Skip coconut oil, skip palm oil. The tropical oils are really high in saturated fat. I don't care how well they market them and tell you how healthy they are. Shine your shoes with them, put them in your hair, but don't eat them.
Perfect. Let's see, for any of these final questions over here, with making adjustments to a different diet, salt, seasonings, spices, recommendations for helping with the taste, gaining a taste for certain foods.
Oh, it's a good thing that you said that. My old friend, the late, great John McDougall, used to always say, don't get into a wrestling match about salt at first. Because when a person is adapting to a plant-based diet, for some people, it's a little bit of a job. It takes a couple of weeks to get used to the idea that you're not having cheese anymore.
Yeah.
And kind of don't worry about the salt. Leave that for a little bit later to deal with. And I think that's good advice. But yes, bring in the spices and things and have fun with them. When I was a kid growing up in Fargo, North Dakota, we had 2 spices, salt, pepper. That's all we knew about. And then once you start thinking internationally, whether it's Asian cuisine, African cuisine, Japanese cuisine, let yourself try these different flavors that people have been exploring for centuries and see what you like. It's a nice exercise, either for going to restaurants to see what they're using and then trying it at home, or when people use a service like Purple Carrot or something where the foods come to you and you assemble them. Get to know some of those ingredients because it can really make it a fun adventure to try new foods.
We've been doing a couple polls throughout this, Dr. Barnard, just to get a gauge from our community, from everyone who is tuning in. Our latest question is, what is your biggest struggle with eating plant-based? And the poll is still going right now as everyone chimes in their answers, but it does look like our 2 top ones are, I love cheese. And then somewhere in the middle is, I like junk food too much and my family isn't plant-based. When we talked about cheese already a bit, when it comes to some of the junk foods, any final tips for making some certain swaps when it comes to a whole food plant-based diet? And how do we succeed the best when maybe our family around us isn't following the
Okay.
same path?
Actually, let's go back to cheese for just a minute,
Yeah,
because
please.
this is one area where people really run into trouble. They get very addicted to it. They gain weight, and also this is one of the foods that has kind of a moral aspect that's useful for people to know and that they may not know. Just really, really quick.
Yeah.
Cheese is 70% fat, mostly saturated fat. It's got more salt, more sodium than potato chips, ounce per ounce. It doesn't have any fiber at all. If it were any worse for your health, it would be Vaseline. But it has something else that is not good, and that's estrogens. And the reason is important. And let me just go into this in 1 minute.
Yeah.
On every dairy, everywhere in the world, there is some underpaid farmhand who sticks his hand up the cow's rectum. And through the rectal wall, you can feel the uterus, and you grab it with your left hand. With your right hand, you put what looks like a knitting needle through the cervix, and they inject semen that they took from a bull. And that cow is pregnant that day. 9 weeks later, she gives birth, and her calf will be taken away. This happens everywhere. I don't care what country you're in. I don't care how people may say that it's not a factory farm. The cow's got to get pregnant, and you got to take the offspring away if you want to have milk that you can sell. That's the way they do it. For many people, just knowing that is enough for them to say, you've cured me. I don't want it. The other thing to understand is when that calf was nursing, there is something in the milk, and that's what are called casomorphins. Casein, the milk protein, breaks apart to release casomorphins that nature designed to go to the calf's brain and cause a calming effect. And the way they do it is the casomorphins break off from the casein, go in the bloodstream, attach to the very same receptor that a narcotic would attach to, like Demerol or heroin.
Yeah.
And when you consume the milk, it does that to you, and that's why people get hooked on it. So my hope is that people will think, all right, enough of that. I don't want to have it anymore. And if you need one more thing to cure you, dairy cows, they would normally live to be about 20. On a typical dairy in the United States and much of the rest of the world, they kill them at 4 because it's not producing enough milk to justify their existence. Regarding junk food, if it's vegan, if it's low fat, I wouldn't stress about it all that much. As time goes on, you're going to go toward more and more healthful food. If it's family members, I wouldn't get into a wrestling match. What I would do is eat well, cook for them.
Yes.
Say, I'll do it tonight, and I'll do the dishes. And you'll discover that as time goes on, people will probably join you. But they knew who you were when you were a dribbling toddler. They're not going to take your nutrition advice. But what you can do is you can cook for them. You can share what you know. You can share a book.
Yes.
You can watch a movie together.
Yes.
So somebody other than you giving them the news.
And I think that is fantastic advice, especially for anyone who is struggling out there. There are so many resources, including this amazing chance to talk with you. We have your book, The Power Foods Diet, with brilliant recipes in there from your aforementioned co-collaborators. With that, we have the Forks Over Knives magazines that are available, and of course the Forks Over Knives website. Lots of recipes, lots of advice. The Forks Over Knives film available to sit down and watch for free with your family, featuring Dr. Barnard and many others in the field. If you have any extra questions, you can always reach us at customer service at forksoverknives.com. That's customer service at forksoverknives.com. Dr. Barnard, if people wanted to get in contact with you or PCRM with more questions, where could they go?
Our website is pcrm.org. And I hope people will look there. There's plenty of recipes, lots of information, and there's a way to get in touch with us. And for people who have medical issues, the Barnard Medical Center, we do telehealth as well. It's barnardmedical.org.
We have so many people who are saying thank you. Thank you for this webinar. Thank you for your books. Thank you for your work. For everyone watching, or in case you're now watching at this point, there will be a replay of this. Yes, you can find it on the Forks Over Knives YouTube page. You can watch this over and over and over and soak in all of this valuable information about calorie density, this simple approach to healthful eating and lifelong weight management. Dr. Barnard, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for gifting us with the information and your wisdoms as always.
Thank you. It's been great talking with you today.
Okay, everyone, have a happy, delicious, and fulfilling day ahead.